It has no jaw. It has no bones. It has remained virtually unchanged for 360 million years. It attaches to its prey with a suction cup mouth. It rasps away the flesh with a tongue covered in teeth. And it drains the blood until the victim is a husk. For thousands of years, Niagara Falls kept this monster out of the Great Lakes. Nature built a wall to protect the largest freshwater system on Earth, but in 1829, we broke that wall, and we have been fighting the consequences ever since. This is the story of how one engineering marvel created an ecological catastrophe. How a single species brought a $7 billion fishing industry to its knees, and why, nearly 200 years later, we still cannot undo what we started. The sea lamprey is not a fish, not really. It belongs to an ancient group called agnathans, jawless vertebrates, living fossils from a time before dinosaurs, before trees, before almost everything you can imagine. Fossil evidence shows that lampreys existed 360 million years ago, and according to researchers at the University of Chicago, they have remained largely unaltered since then. They survived 4 mass extinction events, the one that killed the dinosaurs, the one that wiped out 90% of marine life. All of them, the lamprey endured. It does not have a skeleton made of bone, just cartilage. It does not have scales. It does not have paired fins. What it does have is a mouth, a circular suction cup mouth lined with rows of sharp horn-shaped teeth. In the center of that mouth is a rasping tongue that works like a cheese grater. In the Atlantic Ocean, where the sea lamprey evolved, it latches onto larger fish, whales, sharks, anything big enough to survive the attack. It secretes an anticoagulant similar to a leech. It drinks their blood and body fluids. Because these ocean fish co-evolved with the lamprey over millions of years, most of them survive. They shake it off. They heal. They live. But the fish in the Great Lakes never saw this coming. They had no defenses, no immunity, no chance. The Great Lakes sat protected for 12,000 years, ever since the glaciers carved them out of the continent. The Niagara River connected Lake Erie to Lake Ontario, but Niagara Falls, that 100-meter drop of thundering water, acted as a natural barrier. Nothing from the ocean could get past it. The sea lamprey was trapped in the Atlantic. Lake Ontario was the only Great Lake it could reach, and even there, records suggest it may have been present since the early 1800s, possibly entering through the Erie Canal in 1825. But the upper lakes, Erie, Huron, Michigan, Superior, they were safe, protected by the falls, until we decided the falls were in the way. In 1824, a Canadian entrepreneur named William Hamilton Merritt had a problem. His mills along 12 Mile Creek needed more water. He saw an opportunity. What if he could build a canal, not just to power his mills, but to connect Lake Ontario to Lake Erie? Ships could bypass the falls entirely. Goods could flow from the Midwest to the Atlantic. The economic potential was enormous. The Welland Canal Company was formed. Construction began on November 30th, 1824. Workers dug by hand, picks and shovels, horse-drawn carts, 40 wooden locks carved into the Niagara escarpment. 5 years later, on November 30th, 1829, 2 schooners named Annie and Jane and R.H. Broughton sailed from Lake Ontario to Lake Erie. It was an engineering triumph, a monument to human ingenuity, and it was a door we could never close. At first, nothing happened. The sea lamprey was still confined to Lake Ontario. The original Welland Canal was narrow, shallow, difficult to navigate. But over the next century, the canal was rebuilt, enlarged, deepened. The most significant reconstruction came in 1919. Engineers widened the canal. They changed the water flow direction. They made it easier for ships to pass through. And they made it easier for something else to pass through too. By 1921, sea lampreys had been spotted in Lake Erie. By 1936, they were in Lake Michigan. By 1937, Lake Huron. By 1938, Lake Superior. In less than 20 years, they had invaded every single Great Lake. And they found paradise. The Great Lakes offered everything a lamprey could want. Hundreds of tributaries with perfect spawning habitat, rocky stream beds for nesting, soft silt for larvae to burrow into, an abundance of large host fish with no natural defenses, no predators that hunted lampreys, and a reproductive potential that was staggering. A single female sea lamprey can produce up to 100,000 eggs. 100,000. In the Atlantic, natural predators and competition keep their numbers in check. In the Great Lakes, there was nothing to stop them. The population exploded. In the Atlantic Ocean, when a lamprey attaches to a fish, it feeds. It takes what it needs, and typically the host survives. In the Great Lakes, it is different. Great Lakes fish are smaller than their ocean counterparts. They never evolved with this parasite. When a sea lamprey latches onto a lake trout, it does not just feed, it kills. Studies show that only 1 in 7 fish survives a sea lamprey attack in the Great Lakes. 1 in 7. And each individual lamprey can kill up to 40 pounds of fish during its 12 to 18-month feeding period. 40 pounds per lamprey. The math is terrifying. Before the invasion, commercial fishermen in the United States and Canada harvested about 15 million pounds of lake trout from the upper Great Lakes every year. 15 million pounds. It was a thriving industry. Tens of thousands of jobs. Entire communities built around it. By the late 1940s, the lamprey population had exploded. They attacked lake trout, lake whitefish, ciscos, walleye, sturgeon, anything large enough to be worth feeding on. By the early 1960s, the annual lake trout harvest had dropped to approximately 300,000 pounds. 300,000, down from 15 million, a 98% collapse. During the peak of the invasion, 85% of the fish that were not killed outright bore lamprey wounds. Scars from attacks they barely survived. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission later estimated that sea lampreys were killing more than 100 million pounds of fish annually. 100 million pounds per year. That was 5 times the entire commercial harvest. The fishing industry did not just decline, it collapsed. Commercial operations shut down. Charter boats went out of business. Hundreds of thousands of jobs connected to the fishery vanished. Property values near fishing communities dropped. A way of life that had existed for generations was nearly wiped out. And it was all because of a canal. An engineering project meant to help the economy had instead destroyed it. By the 1940s, fishermen and scientists knew they had a catastrophe on their hands, but they had no idea how to stop it. They tried physical barriers to block lampreys from entering spawning streams. They tried crude electrical barriers. They tried trapping. They even tried to create a commercial market for lamprey meat, hoping fishermen could catch enough to reduce the population. Nothing worked. The lampreys kept multiplying. The fish kept dying. It seemed hopeless. Then, in 1955, the United States and Canada formed the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. Their mission was simple: save the fishery. And that meant finding a way to kill sea lampreys without killing everything else. Scientists began testing chemical compounds, thousands of them, looking for something that would be lethal to lampreys but harmless to other fish and wildlife. It took years. They tested over 6,000 different chemicals. Then, in 1958, they found it, a compound called TFM, 3-trifluoromethyl-4-nitrophenol. It disrupts the energy metabolism of lamprey larvae, kills them before they can ever grow up to become parasites. And remarkably, at the concentrations used, it does not harm other fish, plants, or wildlife. It was a breakthrough. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission began applying TFM to tributaries where lamprey larvae were concentrated. They built barriers to prevent adults from reaching spawning grounds. They set traps. They even experimented with releasing sterilized male lampreys to reduce reproduction. The integrated approach worked. Over the following decades, sea lamprey populations in the Great Lakes dropped by 90%. 90%. Fish populations began to recover. Lake trout, once nearly extinct in the upper lakes, started to rebound. The fishing industry slowly came back to life. Today, the Great Lakes fishery generates more than $7 billion annually. It is one of the most successful invasive species control programs in the world. But here's the thing, it never ends. The sea lamprey cannot be eradicated, not completely. The Great Lakes are too vast. There are too many tributaries, too many places for lampreys to hide and reproduce. If control efforts stopped tomorrow, the population would rebound within years. We would be right back to the 1950s. Fish populations collapsing, industry destroyed, the same nightmare all over again. So the treatments continue. Every year, about 200 streams are treated with lampricides. Barriers and traps are maintained. Researchers monitor populations constantly. It costs millions of dollars annually, and it will cost millions of dollars every year, forever. That is the price of opening a door that cannot be closed. And the sea lamprey is not alone. Since the Welland Canal and the St. Lawrence Seaway opened the Great Lakes to ocean-going ships, more than 180 invasive species have entered the system. Zebra mussels arrived in the 1980s. They filter the water so aggressively that they have starved out native species and altered entire food webs. Quagga mussels followed. They are even more efficient competitors. Scientists estimate there are now 437 trillion quagga mussels in Lake Michigan alone. 437 trillion. Round gobies, alewives, Eurasian ruffle. Each one brought its own damage. And now, the next threat is waiting at the door. Asian carp, bighead and silver carp. They can grow 4 feet long and weigh 100 pounds. They eat up to 40% of their body weight every day. They consume plankton, the base of the entire food web. In some parts of the Mississippi River Basin, where they have already invaded, Asian carp now make up 97% of fish biomass. 97%. They have nearly eliminated everything else. Right now, the only thing stopping them from entering Lake Michigan is an electric barrier in the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal, a man-made connection that links the Great Lakes to the Mississippi River Basin. Another canal, another door we opened. If Asian carp get through, scientists believe they could devastate the Great Lakes ecosystem. The $7 billion fishery would be at risk again. And unlike the sea lamprey, we do not have a lampreycide for carp. We do not have a proven control method. Once they get in, they may be impossible to stop. The Great Lakes hold 20% of the world's surface fresh water. They provide drinking water to more than 40 million people. They support a fishing industry, a shipping industry, tourism, recreation, billions of dollars, millions of jobs. And they are under constant threat from invaders we keep accidentally letting in. The sea lamprey taught us an expensive lesson. We built a canal to make money. We ended up spending far more trying to fix the damage. Nearly 200 years later, we are still paying for it. And we will keep paying, forever, because some doors, once opened, can never be closed. The next time you look at a map of the Great Lakes, remember what is swimming beneath the surface, a creature 360 million years old, unchanged since before the dinosaurs, waiting in the tributaries, waiting to feed. We did not bring it here on purpose, but we brought it here. And now, we live with the consequences. The invasion is not over. It never will be.